It's so
choke.
They're never even going to be able to tell.
I'm going to just rub my knee.
Just like you never go home the same way. You know what I mean? Like, we got
You
this.
pick a different way that you go home every day?
No, of course not. It's a joke.
Okay.
But they're not trying to murder me like they're trying to murder you.
Welcome to Stop Whining About Real Estate. Join us as we chat, sip, banter, and wine with the best in the biz. Grab a glass of your favorite vino, sit back, relax, and let's wine together.
Good afternoon, everybody. Emmanuel St, Germain, your host today of Stop Whining About Real Estate. I've got my cohort here, Sarah Biernbaum, and my good buddy, Aaron Buchbinder, who leads the Buchbinder Group at Compass Real Estate. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So Aaron has so first of all, for those of you guys who don't know Aaron, he's like a complete rock star. He does a lot of really cool stuff. He does this thing called the Roadshow, I think you call it. So I want to talk about that in a few minutes. Aaron was also in medical school before he decided to give up the noble concept of being a doctor to being a realtor. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And Sarah, why don't you lead us off and get Aaron started on some.
Sure. So one thing I will say is Aaron is part of the Boca Raton Compass office, which has a lot of powerful kind of, high producing agents in there, some really great teams. And if you're in this area and from this area, you've, I'm sure, heard of a lot of the people that come through that office. And we go to a lot of presentations that we're there, doing with the office. And they all usually come pretty dressed up and, very kind of on top of stuff. And Aaron usually strolls in slightly on time-ish, always in the same jeans, t-shirt, hat, most of the time backwards hat, flip-flops. And if you didn't know Aaron or who he was or anything about his team, you would just think like, maybe this guy's new, maybe he's lost, does he, and
does he have a home?
He has this whole look about him, yet Aaron, and he's very under the radar and does not talk about himself in kind of like a boastful way, but is he's a really mega producer. His team is a mega producer, kind of dominates the Boca area for sure. I'm sure at this point you've seen signs with his name on it. So with all of that, I think it's just pretty cool to watch you. I've known you now for about a year and a half at different events and stuff that we've gone to and gotten to know you and talk to you. And so how did you go from medical school into what you're doing now and then kind of adapt this whole just really stay true to you kind of persona that you've got?
Well, appreciate the grandiose introduction. And, the truth of it is when I got out of college, I actually was doing pharmaceutical sales in 2008, which, if anybody remembers '08, those were like some of the worst times ever, especially as a realtor. But, I was very fortunate. I got a job out of school, and it was a really cool job with Galderma Laboratories. I kind of got to travel the whole country on the company's dime, and anywhere there was a vacancy or termination, I filled in.
Sarah, by the way, just looked at me, and I looked at her the second you said on the company's dime, traveling the whole country.
Well, no.
So I know where her brain was going, and I'm like, no, denied. That budget is not approved.
Actually, wrong. No, I knew somebody back in that time when pharmaceutical sales reps were able to spend an exorbitant amount of money. Like, it was like, take more doctors to dinner, spend more money on these tabs, give more gifts.
So, yeah, those times were great. I had corporate apartment, corporate car, corporate travel. And, at that time I was doing a bunch of stuff for the psoriasis, which was great because actually in the pharmaceutical world, I actually got to launch 2 drugs. And if you talk to a lot of people in the pharma world, they only get to maybe launch 1 drug their entire lifetime. I got to launch 2 in less than a year, which was amazing. But I really quickly learned, dealing with gatekeepers and how things were going. It's great when, the Benjamins are flowing, but once they made all the pharma guidelines, life changed very quickly. I was really excelling in the career, and it was actually funny. At the time, I was living in New York City, and it kind of all happened then when the pharma guidelines were changing, and I was, talking to doctors, take me out, or, I would always bring bagels or different things to get through the door. And then once the pharma guidelines really started cracking down, I was like, well, this is now a job, not like a career by anymore. And I really just said, you know what? Because, to go to do the pharmaceutical sales, you had to go through all these modules and training. And, both my parents are physicians. So I I had this deep medical background, and then, the genius in me says, I'm going to go to med school and I'm going to become a doctor and maybe take over my parents' practice. And, I both went to my parents, and as you would think any, family be like, this is amazing, great. They're like, what the F are you doing? This is a terrible, terrible idea. And my father would sit me down and say, like, you don't want to do this. You'd be spending all this money. And, at the time I was just really like on a journeyman. Like I was traveling the country. I'm like in my early 20s and, used to having all that corporate budget. I was like, you know what? I've traveled, a lot of times, in your early 20s, you want to go and explore. It's like, I was like, Mom, Dad, I've traveled. Like, I've been to every single major city. I got to live in different areas. Like, it's not about the traveling anymore in my early 20s. I want to just pick a career and go for it. So, I was very successful in the sales, did very well with it. But then I came back to Florida. I actually had to be a freshman. So I kind of joke about it was my Van Wilder years after doing all that stuff, because I basically was 22 doing freshman algebra and, the bios and all this different stuff. And I was doing it here at FAU in Lynn. Fast forward 2 years, I was doing medical research, got into med school. Like, actually was in this MBS program at Nova Southeastern, and I was doing great. And I just remember, like, 3 months into anatomy lab, I just like looked up one day and just said, mic drop, I'm done. Like, I'm over this and I'm going to figure this out. And, that's about 2012. And, at the time, you're back to the drawing board, living in downtown Fort Lauderdale. I don't really know what I want to do. One of my dear friends just goes to me and he's just like, listen, man, like, just get your real estate license. You'll figure out. And I got it. Cool. 2 months later, my skill sets were high. I get it. And then I'm just like, all right, cool. Like, I'm doing this. And, you're going through it and you're just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Flash forward a little bit further, had a few successful deals. And I'm like, okay, I can make a living at this. Like, I like the idea that you're your own boss. You can make 6 figures in one deal over the weekend. But, flash forward a little further, you're just like, how to like make this like a real career, which then led me to one other company where they were doing a lot of online lead generation. And then when Compass came, I know Boca, I know things like they love trendy new companies. And I was one of the first agents to join Compass in Boca Raton and really kind of make a splash. But what you guys were kind of alluding to, like where my secret power really came in, was I realized after my first year or so at Compass, the national network they have and doing referrals was really like where the money was at. Like I was just, we all do different things in sales, and I was just so exhausted of chasing online leads, Zillow leads, different things. And, listen, I built a good reputation and, I had a lot of online lead generation stuff that I was doing with a few partners and very, very successful at it. But you're just consistently defending, like, why work with me, even though you just clicked on me on the internet out of nowhere, and, why I'm the best broker in Boca versus getting warm referrals, which, are the best. So, after losing out on a few big financial guys, a few months later, I'd go on Facebook and I realized they were mutual friends with a good colleague of mine. And I'm like, how the hell did you know these guys? Like, he's like, I swore they were going to buy in Boca. And he's like, no, they bought in Coconut Grove with me in Pinecrest. And I ended up losing like $10 million in deals that I could have got a referral if I just thought of calling a cohort of mine. And I just said, you know what, I'm done with these online leads. I'm going to start doing this roadshow. I'm going to start learning more of like how you do your networking and vice versa. And, since then it's just been nonstop working the referrals. And that's just been like kind of my secret sauce of just being genuine me and trying to find other versions of me in different cities.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it's a genius idea, but for anyone who doesn't really understand what he's talking about, is that in real estate, he's traveling the country, and we're in South Florida. We're obviously a destination. Lots of people are moving here. Lots of people sell their businesses, and they move down here. Lots of second homes, family members. So for Aaron to go to Philadelphia, New York, different things, an agent in that market isn't going to come down here, even if they are licensed for the most part, to show someone houses that may or may not buy.
Right.
So the way that the real estate industry works is that by referring an agent that they like, in this case, Aaron, he gives them part of the commission back, right?
Yeah, I mean, I consider it like a partnership in a deal, because even though they're giving a warm referral, they're just as vested as I am to have success. A lot of times, we call
you don't
like,
close, they don't make any money either.
Exactly.
It's also their name and the reputation that they handed them, the client over to you.
100%. You know how many times I'm scared shitless to give anybody like a stamp of approval, like when they ask me for a painter or whatnot. Because
absolutely.
If they do a great job, you're the greatest person on earth. But if you give them the devil, like, you're
the worst.
You're the worst. So, to get those like warm referrals from, these agents from the all these metropolitan areas has been a godsend to me because it really kind of transformed my business. But, like you said, like I've done a really good job of just kind of putting myself out there. But I realized just being myself and being me, and in my journeys, just really connect with people and just find those deeper connections. Because I realize when you're working with people, you want to work with people that are like-minded like yourself. You don't want to be, type A put with a type B because you don't necessarily gel all the time. So, by going really deeper with people, however you connect with them, whether, you're doing Zooms on the road or phone calls, like even today, someone called me because I met them in Tampa last week, and she said I really resonated with her because I was talking about my road plan, and she's just like, I never thought about doing my business like that. And, her and I had a deeper connection. And, the genuine thing is like, I connected with her. I left something memorable with her. And anytime she thinks of, South Florida, Boca Raton, hopefully I'm the guy.
Right.
But, you can't win them all. All you want is like the at-bats that kind of come to you. But, I always tell people like, we all give thousands of business cards. Who cares? You do the blinks or whatever. How many times I've gone to an event, they're like, oh, let's exchange phone numbers. But unless you like do something memorable, you're not going to remember who they are. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just another number in your phone book.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a question about kind of the process of how you do the road shows, just because in a very similar capacity, I'm going out to meet agents, to build relationships, to be memorable in some way. Mm-hmm. And the hope is that when they think of mortgages, they think of me and they want to put their mortgage and their buyer with us. Mm-hmm. So when you're going on these road shows, what is the method that you're doing this? Do you go out and invite a bunch of people from a certain space? From what's the way that you do them?
Well, I'd say there's trials and errors to every single road show I've done. When I first started off, I was very strategic. I went to my manager, who at the time was Susie, and at Compass, we have the very fortune of tracking where most of the referrals come from. And I realized actually the most referrals from Compass is Florida to Florida. So I said, the first thing I'm going to do myself is, where the most referrals coming in are within state. So I made it a point to go to every single major office in South Florida. And then I eventually went to Central, West, and then North Florida. But I was very strategic about it. I would call the manager. I would be up front and say, I'm coming. When is a good time to come? Because if you came to our office today, I was maybe one of 3 agents that were in the office today. Yeah. But if you kind of plan around when there's a big meeting, then there's a higher probability of, retention of what's going on there. First few times I did the road show, they were just kind of, bombs, because you just show up and you just think things are going to happen. But I realized when you're going when there's a meeting, or if you can do things to enhance it, even better. Because, every time I go now, I'm like, I call the managers, I'm like, well, what if I supply food, or if I can, maybe I throw a happy hour before or after, do you think you get more retention? And the managers would be like, of course, if you're going to get food in the happy hour, there'll definitely be more. So, that's your key through the door. And then, there's always the shotgun approach, and then there's always the direct approach. So, if it's for a few days, whatnot, like I try to always go do some one-on-ones. I've always realized the manager's always been the key through this. So I sometimes go to the manager and say, this is my level of production. Are there some producing agents I should meet, or are there some newbies? Because you never know. The people who've been in this game for a long time might have their people, even though they might pretend they don't. Indirectly, it kind of happens sometimes. Or like sometimes you want the up-and-coming stars. Regardless, you just want to leave memorable presence for everybody, and you just kind of, go. So like, in a few weeks, I'm going to go to New York, and of course, I'm going to do some shotgun and blast approaches. Actually, I just was in New York a few weeks ago and listen, you'll realize sometimes when you do this, strength in numbers. So you get a few band of brothers or, friends, and you kind of do this. Like we threw a 200-person happy hour in New York City, and just kind of, last year we did it within 24 hours, and we had maybe 100-something people come up. This year we had 3 to 4 weeks ramp up, and, we did it right. We kind of said, hey, like we knew we had success. Let's tell more and more people. Let's actually get some sponsors to come to the event. Let's get more of a budget, because, last year we did all in the women. Like we had over 200-something people show up to Union Square, and thank goodness we knew what the crowd was going to be like, because we forewarned this venue and we set up for success. Because if we just showed up like how we did last year, it would have been one bartender taking care of 200 thirsty agents, which you can all imagine how that can do it. So, I always say, figure things out. But like, events like that, it's great. You leave a memorable presence, but there's no way you're talking to 200 people in the room. So it's all about the follow-up, the registration, make sure you get the emails. And then you kind of, you always want to go deeper with people, but, it's so hard to talk to 200-something people. So, that approach is great, because you kind of put your name on the map sometimes, which, I have gotten some ROI from that stuff right away. But then sometimes you really got to go deep with some of the people, because you got to realize, like, I'm just a guy who threw a happy hour. We may not have talking. You might not know how I do business. You might not know my personality outside of the guy that does the happy hour. So that's why I always say, there's the wide, and then there's like the deep approach. I always love doing, if you're going away for a business, I look at there's 3 meals. There's the breakfast, lunch, to dinner, and then there's the happy hour or the coffee that you can sneak in between. So it's just a matter of like how big or wide you want to cast your nets. And then it's the continued follow-up, which is the key thing in all this is the continued follow-up or staying top of mind.
Yep.
Are you doing the follow-up or someone else doing it for you?
You know, at this point where I'm at, it's become more strategic and more shotgun blasts of whether it's doing stuff on social or email blasts. But, you know, if I'm ever in the car, it's never about listening to music. It's all about follow-up text messages or phone calls. So I'm always constantly calling people. So, you know, last week I've been slowly doing my follow-ups. You know, that was just last week. So you still want people to get back to normal and stuff. But, you know, even today I made 1 or 2 phone calls to people that, you know, had great time and, you know, want to follow up and resonate and, you know, just try to, you know, keep things at a number or saying looking forward to the next event. But, you know, you always do key takeaways and, you know, most agents have their own ways and systems. I, for some reason, have eidetic memory, which, you know, since I went to med school, I just kind of remember everything. But, you know, some of my cohorts who do this roadshow are constantly texting their assistants or emailing themselves saying, don't forget to call so-and-so, or don't forget to do this and this, or, you know, email so-and-so on Monday because of X, Y, Z reasons. And I'm just sitting here on Monday with total recall saying, got to make sure I call so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so.
What technology are you using to register so that you have all your data for your follow-up?
Well, the thing is, when we do the big events, you know, you're typically doing some form of Google form sign-in or Eventbrite sheet. So you're trying to do as much as you can just to get retention there. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I just try to look at photos, look at memories, see who like resonated with me, because you can't like force relationships in time. A lot of it has to be like, you know, organic and natural. So, you know, for me, it's really like even the best thing is when you take selfies with people and, you know, you send them the picture saying, hey, great times here. Let's reconnect. Like that's a
making selfie.
Well, it's making it personal, right?
So Sarah's like, big on the selfies.
Well, the selfie game is great because you know how many people you kind of go through in the crowds and you just like, you know, you're like, who is that person? And then you call, you know, you saw you were talking to so-and-so, be like, oh, that's who this is because, you know, vice versa. And, you know, it's a, you know, plus minus kind of factor, but you always have a memorable picture and a memorable event. But that's a remembering factor that you'd be like, oh, right, I talk to this person and versus, you know, the 300 business cards you could be getting at these things and be like, well, I'm going to call the guy with the nicest card because obviously he spent money on this versus, you know, it's almost American Psycho. You're like, well, this guy did this and this card or vice versa, you know?
If there's 200 agents, are they all Compass? Are you just doing this within Compass or do you expand?
Well, you know, at this point, I'm in a lot of these different networking groups and social different platforms and different things like this. But, you know, the New York thing, like it always, we always focus on Compass because that's where most of our resources is. But like, you know, we have friends that are at Corcoran, Sotheby's, other different events. I'm also part of this agnostic group called Realm, which on these events too, we kind of blast out there like, hey, if you're there, come event, which is, you know, for top brokers through across the nation. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you want to hang out with like-minded people. So, you know, if some people might not want to go to the big thing at the happy hour, and sometimes you're like, all right, like, can you get coffee tomorrow? Because the big happy hour might not be their thing.
Tailor it to the person, I guess.
I absolutely love this. And I think that I don't really know any. I mean, I don't know whether you're the creator or someone else has done it before you, but I don't know of anyone personally that does it. And I think it's it's a really great strategy to do something different. And what I really love about it, like, you know, we talk about it all the time, it's highest and best use.
Yeah.
And if it's not, you know, Sarah used the phrasing, staying true to yourself, right? Well, if that's what you're good at, if you're good at being in front of people, if you're good at throwing a party, like what a better way to do it than this? Yeah. And then as opposed to, you know, like dialing the phones, calling leads where, you know, the person has zero respect for you whatsoever. Because I feel I'm very similar to you in, you know, listen, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm not interested in being on the phone with anybody who doesn't want to be on the phone with me.
You know? 100%. Like you can't force relationships is what I keep saying. But, you know, I'm super ADHD, I would say, but I just can't sit and play defense and wait for things to happen. I rather take things into my own hands. And, you know, I joked about it with, you know, my wife and a few other people, but it's like at the conference last week, someone said, how many days have you traveled this year? And, you know, psychotically, I actually did count. And whether I put them business and travel, the first half of the year till July 1st, I could safely say I did 40 travel days. Whether it was somehow business or family related, I did it. But I've also will say that, you know, before I do this roadshow, there's other things I do to have success. Like, you can't just disappear for 3-4 days and expect business not to go.
Right.
Hence why you say I'm a leader of a group. Like I put great stepping stones behind so that way I can go and travel and do things. And I set goals and expectations with all of my buyers and sellers. They understand that I have a family. They understand that, you know, I'm doing what I can to get them and their name out there, and that I physically may or may not be at every single showing, but I'm the one kind of quarterbacking all the deals. So I feel like by setting goals and expectations to my clients, my peers, my colleagues, and set these things, it's been able for me to set up for true success because, you know, to be a one-man show or one lady show, to go do all this by yourself, like it's a big underwhelming. And that was the thing too, is before I went on all these things, I said I needed a support system before I went on the road, A, and B, I also had to get more credibility. So the other thing I really did before all this was really ramped up my social game, really ramped up my website. So, you know, we all do. We live in the 21st century. You're going to Google Aaron Buchbinder when you get home. Of course. So that way, when you do that, I just, you know, I show up, you know, so that's, you know,
this guy's legit.
Yeah. So I did all these before the road show because I knew as a consumer myself, like, you know, look, if I said to, you know, Emmanuel right now, it's like, I'm going to go buy a car, you're going to Google like maybe Cadillac or Mercedes or whatever, but it's not even that. You're going to be like, well, where's the sales place or what's the best place to go here? You know, you're going to do your home research. So that was the first thing I told myself too, is like, before I go do all this, like they're going to look me up, like my social better be tied up, my other things better be tied up, because, you know, if there's nothing for them to land on, you know, I'm just a rumor in the background. Right. But the also thing too is, you know, when you do all these things, it's fun, it's great, but you also, you know, I always, you know, my friends always joke with me, it's like, you know, how many happy hours can you do? Like, are you the happy hour guy? And it's not that. I just feel like the happy hour is just a great way to get people to converge, you know?
Let people get out of their shell. Yeah. You know, it's a little bit easier to have a cocktail with someone and have, you know, talks. You know, for me, I really like the stage. You know, I've done a lot of different things, kind of like you have, but not so much from a consumer, not in terms of getting referrals, but, you know, when we were part of something called the Freedom Club, which is a mortgage marketing animals, it's a coaching group. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you realize that there's a lot of people out there, but we are all built differently. We all have different talent levels. You're obviously a very educated, very sharp, fast individual. And, you know, but depending on how you put that out there, it's really, you know, it can really change the perception. And for me, when I go on stage, has always been my ability to, like, that's when I want to shine. Mm-hmm. I don't enjoy the networking as much as you do. Mm-hmm. Hence why we created the Sarah role. But like, I love this concept for Sarah to do this kind of roadshow stuff. And you mentioned one thing for any loan officers or any young salesperson that's trying to get into any sales industry. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something from your pharma days, which is the gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. And the gatekeeper has always been an issue for anybody getting anywhere. You know, I remember, like, you know, one used to think that back in the day, if a loan officer or someone in business development wanted to get business out of your office, they would go to your office and bring donuts. But as a gatekeeper, as you just mentioned today, there was 3 out of 200 of you that were in the office. Right. Like, agents don't go to the office. So what is the gatekeeper nowadays? Is it an office manager? Is that, you know, like...
Well, I mean, it's all retrospective, like what you're trying to do. Like, for me, you know, it's meeting as many agents as possible. So that's the
same thing for Sarah.
Yeah. So, you know, I look at venue, opportunity, or unique things to do. So, you know, I usually say the managers are always the gatekeepers because they're the ones who have the personal relationships with the people that you're trying to connect with. Or, you know, if there's bigger groups or bigger teams, like, you know, if you're trying to get in touch with me, you know, there's 2 people who are going to get in touch with me. It's my wife first, obviously. So unless you know my wife on a personal
level, it's going to be a little hard for me to go that route. A little hard
too. But if you do your research, you realize that then the next person would probably be the office manager. Or, you know, if it's a bigger team, who's the executive assistant or office admin? So, you know, that would be my assistant, Michelle. Like, she manages my books, my time clock. You know, obviously my wife and family come first. And then, you know, that's how, you know, things go from there. So I always tell people, it's like, you know, even at the event in Tampa, I said to people, it's like, you know, it's great connecting with you, but we were trying to talk during the happy hour. I said, you know, if you really want to get some one-on-one time, like, let's be proactive, and why don't you shoot me a text or an email, and I will get something on the calendar, and I'll have my assistant kind of schedule. So, you know, I use the happy hour as more of a Trojan horse to kind of get people out. and then you kind of go from there. But Sarah, the gatekeepers in the mortgage world is there's so many just opportunities. It's just a matter of for you guys, it's like you want to, for me, it's just like I'm trying to sell myself in this. You're selling a unique product, and that's also another widget you have than I don't, because the product I'm offering everybody knows about unless it's an off-market deal,
right?
Or it's myself. You guys here at Choice do something really unique, and the way you guys finance and you have the creativity. So you have two options, not just to sell yourself, but you also have a unique product outlet to kind of get out there.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
Yes. No, thank you.
Because if there's something you guys are doing that no other firm can do, and I know you guys do some of this, otherwise, that's why we've been doing, good amount of referrals through the years. That's why you're here. But I always look to is just like the road show's amazing. It's great, but there's also like I've been talking even with my other cohorts at Compass. It's like you can always do these road shows on the road, but you also got to do them locally. So I'm trying to figure ways to get more footholds on the local way, so that way I'm not stressing my family and my wife that I'm constantly on the road.
But when you say locally, with the idea then to get more, so like consumers, or do you ever do like a client appreciation type stuff?
Yeah, I do an annual client appreciation event, and it's strictly for all my clients. I try to set it whoever who's done in the last deal a year or two, and for those who haven't made one, I'm sorry and love to have you at the next one. But I also know we typically do these during the holidays, and life happens. But I'm trying to do more of those events. I also realize, with kids in school, it's probably better to be more entrenched in the family community. So, I'm more involved in my school now with the Dad's Club that they kind of created, and also the alumni board, since I'm trying to be more involved in the school. So I'm trying to do more hyper local things like that. But I've also just been more creativities, and you've seen a lot of my entrepreneurship lately, especially with my my magazine that we've been doing, which actually, inception kind of came from this office and some other stuff. But, when you do the more of these
actually,
things,
that's right. That's right. We were. It was our holiday party.
Okay.
And Aaron and I were having a scotch, and I was showing him the office. I think we hadn't been here very long, and I was telling you about a magazine I did that I saw someone was doing in Austin, Texas, which I thought was really cool. And you still don't. I still haven't seen a version of it, but the idea, which I thought was all right. So let's imagine. Okay, I moved to Boca. I have no idea. What's the difference between St. Andrews? What's the difference between Woodfield?
Yep.
All of these different gated communities. And like Boca for us, because we live here, it doesn't seem that big. But when you are coming from somewhere else, it's enormous.
Yeah.
And you have no idea which community is which and why you should move there.
Yeah.
And if you get an awesome agent like Aaron and his team to represent you, okay, you can say, hey, Aaron, here's what I want. I need this for schools. The house has to have this. He's going to go, this is the neighborhood for you, because he knows it. He's lived here his entire life. But Sally, the brand new agent, who doesn't know anything about the area, like, I know these two neighborhoods. She is going to steer you to the two neighborhoods that she knows, which is not at all necessarily in your best interest. So the concept that I liked that this guy had done, and I was trying to like kind of go towards something a little different, was some sort of online magazine or real magazine, and it would have every community laid out, all the pluses, like the pros and cons, for kind of like a restaurant guide, I guess.
I'll call it more like an almanac, I think is what you were kind of looking for. But, I'll take it one step further. That kind of put me in the mind. And, after masterminding with one of my cohorts from doing the roadshow, I would say, he showed me this local vendor that, that I've been doing monthly now, which is my local True South Florida Scene magazine. If you guys want to be subscribed to it, just get you on the mailing list. Very easy to do. But I realize now that I have a buyer's guide, and part of my buyer guide breakdown is the breakdown of neighborhoods, breakdown of schools. Because, the first thing I always tell all clients when you come down to South Florida, it's like you're buying a slice of life down here. You're going to be totally fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter you live in X, Y, Z or whatnot, but the only person who can decide where you want to live is you yourself. I can't steer you, even though some people try to always steer. I kind of lay out what's on the table. So, for younger families, I always tell people, like, you want to pick the right school, because based upon the schools where you're going to live, it's public. You have defined lines of where you can live and cannot live.
Right.
You don't want to be the person who buys the dream house, but realize they picked the wrong neighborhood, the wrong school, doing the double reverse commute, against all the stuff. And listen, it's happened. We know mutual clients that it has happened to when they did that. So, that's part of like the process and the buying thing where you kind of go through. But, like you said, I would consider more of an art of what I do when I take clients out. Because even this weekend, like I'm taking some new clients out. They're coming from the Coral Gables area. And my first thing I said to them is like, figure out your schools first, because there's 100,000 homes I can show you in Boca Raton, but where you live, whatnot. They eventually said, oh, we're going to go private. So I said, all right, then there's no barrier. Now it's just a matter of like, where do you want to be?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think the market speaking of Coral Gables, because Coral Gables is one of the hottest markets right now. And I think a lot of tech and a lot of money from New York has been moving down there.
Yep, you got the hedge funds, you got Ken Griffin, you got different things going on there. And, first and foremost, I do not sell South. I just, working referral partners so I can work things there. So I try to be that hyper local agent. But, it's just funny because you talk to these people, and I talk to many, many different clients. I actually think the inferno of what's going on in the Miami-Dade market is benefiting the Boca Raton market by all means, because I think most consumers, when they come down to Florida, they think South Beach, and they get to Miami, and then they're like, whoa, this isn't what I thought it would be. And, I have a family and kids. I want to live here. And then they're like, what do you mean I can't buy a house in South Beach? Because, fairly unexistent. And then you go to Coconut Grove or, Coral Gables, and you're like, what do you mean the house is $5-6 million for me to grow my family here? So we've been kind of very fortunate because the escalation of that market has been driving more and more people kind of more north to the towards us. When I say us, I say here in Boca Raton, because this is my major market, which has been great for me. But we're slowly appreciating and growing, and I'd love to see where things are going. Like I joke with people, but we could literally be the price point of Beverly Hills in 5-10 years. It could happen. There's no reason why it can't.
The hedge fund advisor I was listening to on CNBC was talking about that the biggest impediment to more businesses moving south is a lack of schools. He goes, lack of private schools and a lack of the ability to get your kids into a great school. You're coming from, listen, these guys are making a boatload of money. They want the best of the best. They come down, and all of their employees and everyone else that's going to be there, and the schooling is an issue.
No, and I can attest to this. I don't know if you saw, but last year I was actually in The Real Deal quoting this because the demand for private schools was just something absurd. And I can actually tell a true story where I had a buyer on the beach who I had a deal under contract for $25 million. And guess what? The deal didn't happen because two things. Number one, his kid didn't get into school. And, that was like the biggest thing. He applied late. And it doesn't matter, respectfully, I love how all these schools and stuff are, because, there's only so many spaces you can fill in some of these schools. And it doesn't matter, respectfully, how much money you have or not have or how many connections you have. If you apply late to the game, there's only so many spots these schools have, especially when your kids get older. So I've been a big preacher to a lot of my friends and colleagues, and even a lot of people who I see. It's like, if private school is in the cards for your kids, and listen, there's nothing wrong with the public school system by all means. I just want to throw that out there. But I always say, if private school is in the cards, every year you wait, it gets more and more competitive, complicated.
Is that what? So that makes, I had never thought of it that way. That's the reason people, to me, I've always thought, why are you spending that kind of money to get your preschooler, your kindergarten, your first grade?
100%.
There's no way the first grade education.
It gets harder. The wait.
I get that part. I get. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
No, right now, where my kids are in school, if you went in pre-K, if I recall, and nobody hold a gun to my head, but I think there was only 2 classes. But if you send them for kindergarten, they open up a whole entire new class. So there's more opportunity there. But after kindergarten, they don't open up additional classes. It's just X amount of spots per year.
And also the consideration of siblings. So if you have a sibling in the school, usually the next sibling coming in will get a spot a little bit easier because the family's already kind of tied to the school. And so if you're coming in 8th grade and, there's only so many spots, and it's a lot less likely to get in at that age than it is early.
Yeah, so the biggest number one conversation I have with young families is let's talk the school game, because until you know your school game down pat, it's hard to go show you houses. So I have the one thing I do with most of my clients is I do this great buyer consultation which I learned, from the years of practice. Like that's the most important thing you can, because I realized that's where I was missing out a lot of referrals. You got a buyer on the road says I'm pre-approved or I'm ready to go and I want to go buy a house this weekend. And you just go take them and show that house. Oh, you don't like this? Let me go show you more. Vice versa. You're actually hurting yourself.
Dog chasing the tail.
Yeah,
because you're never understanding what they want.
Yeah, so I have this whole down pat system where you have like the 2-minute speed date when you first get introduced to the client or whatnot. I set up a whole buyer consultation, which usually like a 15-30 minute Zoom. I show them the map. I break down Boca to them. I show them all the different areas. I explain, theoretically which school districts are here, here, and here. I try to preemptively send them the buyer's guide so they can do a little research. I send them niche.com so they can research the schools. And then, they still are like, I still don't know where I want to be. That still happens a lot. But
and that's where your expertise kind of comes in.
No, but by doing this, this is me pre-snowball.
Yeah, you're trying to funnel into a smaller lane or a smaller pool.
Yeah, like even this, like I said, the client this weekend, he's been very vocal with me. He's like, we haven't applied to the schools yet. We are going to be applying now. So, my mental clock already knows he's probably not a buyer for 5 to 6 months because he's going to wait to hear that all out. But what I want to do is get him extremely excited for him to say, I know I want to be in neighborhood A, B, or C. Everything else doesn't matter. And then from then and there, it's just fine tuning his search and fine tuning everything from there. Because then it's just you're offensively ready to go for when the time is right, especially in this kind of limited inventory market. But the school thing is, there's definitely no joke. I tell everybody this, like that's a big thing. But if schools aren't your big thing, like there's always the premium market. There's always the country clubs. There's always the, what's the right club for me? There's the condo market of what's the right building for me.
Right.
And that's, it's another educational bell curve of that. But, that's why I always tell people like work with someone who's hyper local and knows things, and don't get the agent from necessarily Orlando or Miami who's willing to drive up for the one deal, because, it happens, it happens here and there. And, I get it. But I think now with all this NAR stuff happening more and more, I think that's really just going to give us local agents room to shine. And that's why I tell agents all the time, like, it doesn't matter where you are in the game or where you start in the game, align yourselves with good people or good support and, good success will have it. I would say this year we probably grew my team a little bit, probably about 10-20% of new agents. And it's all been there to, first of all, help strengthen me so I can do more and more numbers. But a lot of them were solo principals on their self for years and, realized they needed, some camaraderie, some culture, some help to help them grow. And, that's the fun part of being, the team lead is, kind of helping growing that. I joke around and I say the mystery men, but we really are Avengers,
So it's definitely an interesting concept. I'm a big fan, by the way, and I always preach on, obviously, like I want a loan in Jacksonville, in North Carolina, South Carolina, all these different areas, but there is always a unique advantage when I'm local.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with, if you're buying a house in this area, there's a good chance I know who the listing agent is. I've run into them. I've done a transaction with them. And where there's a huge advantage from the lending perspective is if and when something starts to go whatever, anything less than perfect, and you have the ability to put all the parties together, and you are local, and people know that they can come to your office as opposed to, doesn't matter, any internet lender that offered your client a great deal, and all of a sudden they start dropping the ball, but they're in California. Like, what do you do? They're not referring you any business. Neither you nor the listing agent or any of the parties are ever going to talk to this company ever again. Like, they just don't care. So for me, accountability, and I think that's where one of the best things about being local and having a reputation is the accountability that, look, if you refer us somebody, like, we need to do an amazing job always, because it stops. Those referrals stop. No different than the same thing for you. If an agent in Compass, New York, one of the offices refers you something and you like pawn it off or don't do a great job whatsoever, you're losing, an entire office. You might get blackballed.
Hope that never happens, but listen.
It won't, because you know what you're doing just like we do. But my point is that you care, because it's a bigger responsibility to carry, and it's a bigger burden to carry than it is when it's a lead.
I 100% agree with you. And look, at the end of the day, and all of us, it doesn't matter.
Well, it's a peer putting their trust in you.
It's that too, but it's really
do what they would do.
The add value is what it is. We could be anything off an assembly line, but why me? why me versus XYZ, the add value of why my prices, the add value of why my services, or, you know, why Aaron, because I trust Aaron because he's been here for 38 years. He knows where this neighborhood is, where it's going. You know, people ask me, it's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? Or you want me to tell you what I really want to tell you? You know, like, you know, those people, you know, the reason why I loved getting into real estate was I realized it's like one of the most emotional points in someone's life, just like a medicine. Like, that's like really like, that's the, you know, the bedside manner of dealing with that. Like, it's like you really see like a lot of people's true colors in the residential world. In the commercial world, not so much. In the commercial world, it's like
less bedside manner is needed.
No, it's more about like the numbers make sense or they don't. You know, they don't care. Like if the building's
like refinancing for us.
Exactly. But like, you know, here, like you'll see someone like lose it over like the tiniest thing because it's their dream house and, you know, whatnot. And, you know, you see, you know, one of my clients calls me the rabbi, the bartender, the taxi driver, because like you're really like doing this like emotional coach through it all. And to explain to them like why to put the faith in you to get them to the finish line is like the most important thing. And I say you take that with whatever products you're trying to sell and whatnot. But that's, you know, that's part of the approach of the white glove service that I try to sell as being their local referral partner.
I think that's a lot of what we do too, is because we have kind of access to their most personal financial world that they don't share with pretty much anybody else. And they're kind of depending on us to, one, take a look at all of that and be their best advisor and kind of lead them in the right direction and do what's best for them and get them to the end. And it's super emotional and it's a huge transaction. And, you know, the way that we have to handle and make sure that we keep it, I always say, keep it superhuman, make sure that there's a person waiting for a set of keys on the other side. And this is, you know, the biggest part of what they're going to be doing in their lives, and it's a big deal.
No, part of the dream team is like, listen, if I'm referred the person, then I'm referring them to you. It's like, you know, it's a whole domino effect. Like, you know, I got to tell the referral person, don't worry, I'm going to find them a home. Well, hey, you need a loan. I got to make sure you get the loan. Let me contact you, my people at Choice. And, you know, it's a whole team effort because we're all here waiting to the assembly line. So, you know, I always tell people don't be the, you know, in our business, we call it the secret agent. Like, you know, you got to lay what's out on the table. If there's something else that's like hindering you from telling us what's going on, you know, how are we supposed to do what's best for you? And like, and I actually think these new NAR buyer agreements, as scary as they are to multiple people, it's going to weed out these secret agents because, you know, you're either exclusively working with me or you're not. It's like, you know, we're dating or we're not. There's nothing in between.
Right. Well, I like it more. So, you know, one of the things I was doing a little teams yesterday and today to kind of go over with all of our staff on what are the implications on our side from the lending side. And so one of the business decisions that I made was is to not disclose up front what that difference is, if there is a difference. So meaning you're representing a buyer, you have a 3% buyer-broker agreement with that individual, and the seller has agreed to pay 2% instead of 3%. So now we know, you and I know the buyer is responsible for that 1%. We, on day one, aren't going to disclose that. The same way that we don't disclose a capital contribution or anything that comes to the title company later on. And the reason that we elected not to do it up front. Now, what we are going to do, by the way, is we're going to make sure that we ask up front to you, because you don't right now you guys aren't sending it to us, that buyer broker agreement. So we want
It's only been 48 hours.
Well, that's my point. Yes. So, but
he doesn't ever stop.
Right. But so for us, but I want to make sure, because we need to make sure that we source enough assets, enough money for the cash to close. So
Understood. Because there's only so much.
Well, we don't want to get to the end and next thing you know, there isn't enough money.
No,
but
absolutely.
To that point, what I don't want to do is I don't want to disclose and do what appears to be the right thing. And then, you know, our neighbors next door at, you know, whatever mortgage company don't do it that way. And now, you know, you have a consumer who's not educated enough, and next thing you know, like their cash to close looks less than ours, so they decide to go with the other company.
No, listen, everything that's going on is a huge learning curve to all of us, but I actually think, yeah, we might work a little bit less, which is fine by me. You know, I don't need to stress leaving my kid's baseball game if you're not committed to working with me. You know, like if I'm going to take my time to do it, you know, it's fine. Like, you know, we all have a job and we all want to get it done right. But ultimately it falls back onto, you know, the realtors like ourselves. If we do our job right and explain to sellers properly, like why pay a commission and why XYZ, these buyer broker agreements are for nothing. They're just there to reinforce with the clients, you know, who you're working with. It's an interesting thing. And look, I know how your guys' business is. You send out the loan commitment docs. You say, hey, you're committed to me. The one thing I love that you guys do here at Choice is you pretty much do all your underwriting up front as long as the people are telling you the truth.
Yep.
But, we all that's the secret agent part. It's like, hey, you say you make X, but you didn't show me X.
You forgot to tell me about this part.
Yeah, exactly right. That's the unique portion for sure. I think what you're going to see too, and what the part that I'm kind of excited, and I don't know if I'm predicting this incorrectly or not. So let me know what you think. That whole concept of from an agent standpoint, here's 3 lenders. Call these 3 people. I think because you are now fighting yourself to make sure that you get your one-on-one time, your buyer-broker agreement signed, I'm predicting that there's going to be our relationships will be even more enhanced, where you're going to appreciate how much we have to fight to keep that buyer also, because they have options, right? And so the idea of here's 3 guys, call these 3 guys, I just don't see it happening as much, because part of what I was teaching today and yesterday was we have to protect what your buyer-broker agreement is, right? I'm not here to cut your commissions. I don't want to get involved with any of that stuff. I want to make sure that whatever you sell, we are here to back up.
And then I think it all comes down to how good is the word-of-mouth referral. Because if we're all if to be at that batter's box, whether you're the one of 3 names, one of 2 names, or one of 1 name, you did the right job to get where you need to be that word of mouth referral. And I always look at it, for you guys, it's a little bit different, but not, because I think you guys have your own unique products and your own unique ad sales ways and why you use you. And look, I've seen, I know you guys are very, very competitive in the market, but the way you guys kind of do things are a little bit differently than your competitors. And to have an agent actually say that to their client is important, because just like the real estate world, there's always another person who's got their mortgage license and something else and vice versa. So, I think it all kind of starts from the top, and that just shows why I think these, meetings, road shows are so important, because those ultimately will get you in the batter box with whoever that prospective, client may be. The one thing, we all want is obviously lower rate drops, because things will then spice up for all of us. But, until then, you just know that, if you're working with Emmanuel, Sarah, or the team here, you know what you're getting from beginning to end. There's typically no surprise unless the buyer is a double agent, which I always say this because it happened with one of our deals over the last few months. And, you get to the commitment side, and the buyer didn't tell you the full story, and you can only do what you're told when you do your loan docs. So those things happen, but we got it done. That's the key thing. I know Jared got it done.
Do you,
Jared?
So, do you currently have any? I'll call them supply side. Do you ever have any title people? Do you ever have any mortgage people? Anyone else that joins you into the road shows?
I mean, it's all different perspective. What I typically do is if I go to an out of market, look, I've called you guys and said, hey, I'm going to New York. You want? And Jared said, not with a 9-foot pole, so and New York's typically on the no-fly list. But if I said the word,
Jared doesn't really like to leave his little cubby hole.
No, but I meant in general.
No,
obviously there could be another minion from the Choice Mortgage Group.
I will be the minion.
Yes,
but
AKA Sarah.
Minion Sarah, send her out.
What I've done is
I'll do one with you.
No, but what I've done is first thing I do is if I'm doing a big event, I'll just kind of put it that way. And look, usually if I'm doing a big event, I'm not doing the road show alone. I have a cohort or 2 that I typically invite as a realtor, because I realize strength in numbers. You travel with more, you get more of a draw. But the first thing you do is you contact your peeps and say, hey, I'm going. Do you have interest for you? And if I say the word, I'm going to Chicago, you might be like, we're not licensed in Chicago. But you
Doesn't
guys,
make any sense.
Are you guys licensed in Chicago?
No.
See, exactly. So I would first off go to my peoples, because if I'm making money on the road, you guys want to make money on the road. So first thing I would say is, hey, I'm going to go to Chicago. There's going to be 200 agents there. They all might not be from Florida or Chicago. Any interest? You'd be like, lower probability, because we're not licensed there. If we want to go, we want to do this X, Y, Z. So my next thing would be is go to my local Chicago agents and be like, who's your best referral partner in the mortgage world, because they might be licensed. They might be licensed in Florida and want my business. Just kidding, but honestly, it sounds silly. A lot of these lenders, and I would say all these trades, they know when you're asking for them, it's really an opportunity to get your you in the hold, but they're seething at the lips because how many agents are going to be there? Like when I called and recruited these people from New York, they're like, you're going to have 200 plus agents there, and you're going to have the registered emails, and I can get these at-bats. And I go, listen, you know how email lists are, but here's the event. We will be there. I'm not saying you got to talk to all 200 people. You get one deal out of it. Something happens. And listen, like I firsthand saw a business happen between different, either it was a lender or insurance agent. Like if these guys were there working the rooms, and I know that they made their money back from their small endorsement of the event that we were doing. So, I always say, like, look, if you're doing this, you might have an insurance partner you want to go with, because between you two, you can do more things like that. That's something to consider. Or you just, you keep it focused on brand on the choice aspect, because, for me, it's a little bit different when we're realtors doing it. We're really branding ourselves, and then we're bringing in nuances to kind of help support us. So you might have other arsenals to help push you when you kind of do your show. But yeah, I always go to the local manager or my local referral partners and say, hey, like, all right, I got title from so-and-so. And they're like, oh, that's a good person. Like, he's a well-liked, reputable, title guy in the area. Or here's who I got for lender. It's like, oh, here's another one just in case he can't do it. And, for me, it's usually, look, what's the three normal things we need in every transaction? You need the realtor. Ta-da, here I am. You need the bank.
Ta-da, here I am.
And then, it's usually, what's next? You need insurance.
Ta-da, there they are.
And then what else could you have that's really important in the
title and appraisal?
Well, usually that's, and then
appraisal's us, but
inspectors sometimes you get in there. Yeah. Sometimes you get different,
movers can be important.
Movers, so you just kind of figure out that arsenal of people that could benefit from this. But as realtors, when you're doing these things, it's kind of easier because you can go after web development companies who typically sell the agent websites. There's so many different things, like even me, social media companies and different stuff like that. But you really think, be like, well, who would want to sponsor this? And it's kind of, I take it all back. My friend and I
cut. We're starting over.
No.
Just kidding.
I hate that. It's a funny analogy, but my friend said it once, and it kind of just stuck with me. We're club promoters. You're club promoters, and you're promoting Club Aaron. And who can you get through the door? How can you get as many people there, and how can you sell lights out? And that's the way the mentality really you got to think versus I'm going to throw an event. You're a club promoter for your business. Listen, Aaron's club is the hottest club in town on Tuesdays. It's XYZ per person per door, and this is how it's going to be. So, look, I'm excited to be at Club Aaron, hanging out with Choice, and this is the club right here,
Well, we're licensed in 14 states, and I'll go be at Club Aaron with you anytime you want.
There you go. See? There you go. Or, hey, I'm going here. Like, I never thought about getting licensed into state, but look at this average price point. This might be a good one to get licensed into.
Yeah.
But, even realtors itself, like, I like doing the roadshow most of all, because then when I get the referral, I understand where they're coming from. Like, if you're coming from Long Island, like, to me, actually go visit the Long Island offices and see where they are. Be like, listen, I know the grocery store you went to. We don't have that, but we have a Publix, or we have something like that, but it's this. Or, that also really helps disarm.
Relatable.
Makes me more relatable and disarm the people when they're coming down here. Because, a lot of times people call me and they say, Aaron, I come from this country club. Like, I've been there. I played around the golf there.
And they're like, oh, okay, you have.
I mean, you guys are both from here for your whole lives, for the most part, right? You were born here too?
No, I was actually born in Cincy, but I've been here since 6 months, so I consider myself.
Pretty much. So I mean, there's like, when you're from up north, like there's no, I didn't know what Publix is. You don't know any of this stuff.
Exactly.
So it's a big difference when you're coming down blind. The more that you're able to, feel that a little piece of home, and
yeah, and that's why, like, people come from New York, be like, listen, you don't have Publix up there, but you have Dwayne Reed. That's like the version of this, or you have this, and this. So, I think a lot of that also helps. Because you got to remember, like, even though they're calling you, they're still interviewing you, and they just want to make sure that they're the most comfortable with you. So that's the other big thing. Like,
and that you're going to take care of them.
Yeah, that, and that's why I always get so excited to go to the new cities for as little as much as I see. It just says that I've been there, I feel it, or I'm going to Chicago in September. I'm going to say I know how cold it is, and how versus like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
What's your favorite neighborhood?
In Boca?
In Boca?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all varies. I mean, I don't say there is a favorite. I just say I think there's great lifestyles between all of them. Like, obviously,
Such a political answer.
Not a political, but like, the story I always tell everybody is like, you live Central West Boca typically for your families, which is true. Because if you have a young family, you're typically there. And then when your kids graduate, it's just either, is this home and I don't want to move? Or like, hey, I did this for the kids for 20, 30 years.
Downsizing to a condo on the beach.
Or, sometimes it's the upgrade or something. Like, each country club has its own unique stuff. Like, yes, like, St. Andrews, Broken Sound, Woodfield, they're all great in their own aspects. Like, if you're the crazy avid golfer, most people typically want to go to St. Andrews because you have the 2 courses and not necessarily have to wait for tee times. But, if you're a young family, most people typically gravitate towards Woodfield because of the age demographic there. But there's nothing wrong with Broken Sound. There's nothing wrong with any of these clubs. It's just kind of like, people kind of live where their friends are. My personal goal one day is hopefully have a nice downtown condo or place in the water because you want to see the fruits of your rewards. I'm from here, so it's not necessarily worried about what social club I have to be a part of. But, that's just, everybody's got different aspirations.
Yeah.
Yard. I want a big yard.
Well, a big yard, you like neighborhoods like myself where I'm in Les Jardins. Every house is about a half an acre, or you can go to like a Long Lake and get an acre, or maybe one day you're in, Le Lac or one of the other ones where you get a ton of acres.
Yes, there we go. Cool. Well, Aaron, as we wrap up, please let everyone know if they're an agent who wants to refer you, how can they get a hold of you? If they're a client who wants to tour multi-million dollar mansions and be part of the Buchbinder Group, et cetera, how can everyone get a hold of you?
You can find me on my Instagram. It's the Buchbinder Group. It's got the blue check mark, so it's real and legit. You can find my personal Instagram, very complicated, Aaron Buchbinder, or go to our website, thebuchbindergroupfl.com. I don't know how, but somebody bought thebuchbindergroup.com and they won't sell it to me. I've tried.
Wow.
So, that's where we are. I'm hyper local. You call me anytime. I'm here, and I appreciate you guys having me today.
Cheers.
Loved having you.
Okay, that's enough whining for one day. We are so happy that you could join us today on Stop Whining About Real Estate. So please, not only listen, but subscribe, follow us, download, share, and if you're feeling it, give us a 5-star review. Hey, and if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email stopwhining@choicemortgage.com. Thanks so much.